One of the biggest educational catastrophes, no, scratch that. The biggest educational catastrophe of the last 10 years was when the Obama people decided that there was so much disparity between black children and white children in school discipline that could only be one reason for that, and that is white racism. So they put the call out to all the teachers all across the country, all the school boards, the principals, the superintendents. They told them, we're coming to your neighborhood, your town, your school board, with people from the Department of Justice, Department of Education, to make sure you are rooting out this white racism that's hurting so many of the black people and their lovely ladies. And the only way we know if you've been rooting it out is if we look at your discipline records and we see you stopped disciplining black students so we can get the numbers equal. This was a catastrophe. Black schools today are centers of violence, mayhem, chaos, everything but learning. Somebody in the Trump administration figured this out. Maybe it was Trump. Maybe it was his Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. And they're starting to roll back, starting to trim back. I'm waiting for the day when they grab it by the roots and they pull it out. These ridiculous race-based policies that do so much damage to so many people in this country. They're starting in Atlanta.
Minority students by limiting suspensions. That's part of a federal policy that local schools have had to follow since 2014. And last month, the Trump administration got rid of that policy. And reporter Tina Terry talked to some local educators who fought for that change.
Yeah, those former CMS employees went all the way to Washington, D.C., some of them fighting to have that policy repealed. And today they told me this decision to repeal it will keep your kids safe. Annette Albright will never forget this day in 2016. She says she was attacked by students at Harding High. Some, she says, had a history of discipline issues.
Look at that video, and it's still unbelievable that it happened.
She says a discipline policy implemented during the Obama administration created an environment where students were in control.
I would have kids to tell me, you can't suspend me.
The 2014 policy aimed to make sure minority students weren't unfairly punished because of their race. It encouraged schools to seek alternatives to suspending and expelling students.
It was strictly, if you don't get suspension rates down, you're not getting federal funding.
Albright and other local educators testified in D.C. about the policy. Now a directive by the Trump administration has repealed the policy. It quotes a local educator who said the policy makes school staff less likely to refer matters to law enforcement. But critics of the change say minority students could suffer. Data from 2018 shows there were 10,129 suspensions in CMS through October. More than 7,000 of those students were black, about 1,600 Hispanic. But Albright says the old policy wasn't the solution.
But whatever they're doing in Atlanta, the rest of the country is going full speed ahead on this whole idea that focusing on race in school is going to be the only way, the best way, to improve black dysfunction in school. Yes, I'm talking about the ridiculous level of academic performance, talking about the ridiculous level of suspensions, the ridiculous dropout level, the ridiculous test scores. The magic bullet used to be busing. Now the magic bullet is let's get some black teachers in here.
Black and brown teachers lacking in North Carolina schools.
When I became an administrator, that I noticed it more because at that point, I was also in a position to try to do something about it.
WRAL investigates the teacher diversity gap in the classroom.
So how many black teachers has Erica had?
One?
Yep.
I want you to take a moment and think about something. What did your teachers in grade school look like? What about your children's teachers today?
Now, chances are in North Carolina, the majority of your teachers were white women. WRAL investigates, examine the racial makeup of all 115 school districts in the state. WRAL's Lena Tillett shows us why new research points to the need for change.
Tough love, because I was tough on you, yes. I was. And he was tough on me because you see some of these gray hairs, Trey, part of those belong to you.
Soft-spoken and shy,
High school sophomore Trey Stevens lights up seeing his former Holly Grove Middle School PE teacher, Carl Tyson. No one was more surprised to learn the impact Tyson had on Trey than Tyson.
You're my PE teacher, and I trusted you, so that's the reason I decided to do your club.
Trust has to be earned. It has to be earned. Kids know sincerity.
The chance of this scene happening in North Carolina, a young black male student having a black male teacher, is slim, incredibly slim. A WRAL investigation obtained the racial makeup of every school system in the state. In Wake County, where Tyson teaches, 3% of the nearly 11,000 teachers are black men. In public schools across the state, while more than half of the students are non-white, the majority of teachers, 80%, are white. Why does it matter? A new study out of Johns Hopkins, an American university focused on Tennessee and North Carolina. It finds, quote, black students who have had just one black teacher by third grade were 13% more likely to enroll in college. Those who had two were 32% more likely. Researchers point to what's called the role model effect.
Y'all listening? Y'all ready?
Winston-Salem State University education professor Don Hicks-Tafari says all students win when a teacher workforce reflects the community.
When teachers are a monolithic group, white children don't gain from that either, because they're not experiencing the world as it really is.
Because before then,
the Stevens see these odds in their own household.
My first teacher of color was in public school, and she taught the honor science class.
You remember your first teacher?
I do.
Why?
Probably because I've never had one before.
Were you looking for a teacher of color?
Every single chance I've gotten my entire life.
Andrea, a nurse, and Calvin, a business developer, grew up in Greenville, North Carolina. They each had one black teacher in grade school. Fast forward 20 years, they were stunned to recognize not much has changed for their two children growing up in Wake County.
So, how many black teachers has Erica had?
One?
Yep.
Wake County's racial breakdown looks similar to the statewide average. While students of color make up 54% of Wake's student population, 80% of its teachers are white, 20% are non-white. In Cumberland County and Nash Rocky Mount schools, more than 65% of their teachers are white, while about 70% of their students are non-white. I started my career in Nash County, and there was a diverse school and diverse population at the school, but I was the only Hispanic teacher in the building that I recall. Kathy Moore is another first, the first Latina and woman to be Wake County superintendent. She recalls students of color who looked to her for someone to relate to. There were students who did migrate to me, who felt an identity, who felt a camaraderie and someone that knew a little bit perhaps about them and where they were coming from. When I became an administrator, that I noticed it more because at that point I was also in a position to try to do something about it.
When you did the
As it is now in North Carolina schools, the chances of a reunion like this are unlikely.
I appreciate you, man. Love you.
Love you.
All right, bro. All right, man.
Now you may be thinking now, where are the teachers of color? We talked with a student teacher who says other states are aggressively recruiting him, but not in North Carolina. So why is that? I look into that tomorrow night at 5:30. And also education leaders talk about possible solutions to this diversity gap.
Oh, Lena, that is very eye-opening. Right now on WRAL.com, you can see the diversity numbers in your school system. We have the breakdown from every school system in the state. It's called the Teacher Diversity Gap.
Please, sir, I want some more.
And so the only thing they have to show is to tell us that, hey, more black kids go to college if they have more black teachers. That's flimsy because anybody can get into college. I want to see something that says, yeah, because black teachers show up, that means kids get more better test scores, better grades, fewer disciplinary problems, less dropping out. If they had that, they would have showed that to us. This is just another racial fantasy, another way to express black on white hostility, another way to ignore, deny, condone, excuse, encourage, and even lie about the level of black violence, black dysfunction in this country, especially in the schools. Just another way of not making the black kids angry.